podcast excellence since 2005. This is the King of Podcasts Radio Network, kingofpodcasts.com.
We're rolling into 2025, and for WWE, it's Netflix or bust.
Woo! Hey, this is the Nature Boy Ric Flair, and believe it or not, whether you like it or don't like it, learn to love it, because you have to listen to Wrestling is Real. It is the best thing going today. Woo!
The worldwide leader of podcasting excellence, the King of Podcasts Radio Network proudly presents The Wrestling is Real podcast, because wrestling needs us.
Yes, this is episode 899 of the Wrestling is Real podcast, the final broadcast for 2024. Episode 900 will be a recap of the Netflix debut of Raw, and that's what we're going to go going into that. That's what we got coming up next. And we'll have Fight for the Fallen, AEW Dynamite coming up after that. But I will not be doing that on New Year's night. I'm just going to worry more about focusing on what we'll do next week for it. Because like I said, I'm going to knock out the episodes tonight of my normal broadcast schedule. I'm going to do it before the new year. I'm not going to worry about New Year's Day and all because there's too much going on. I'm just going to, I got football to watch on Wednesday night. So I'm going to watch that intently because there's so much going on. And that's where I want to go with that. I'm in a good mood about football. Right now, my Tampa Bay Buccaneers, at the moment, they're doing really well. They are looking to go ahead and knock on the door into the playoffs with a win over the New Orleans Saints next Sunday. With Atlanta, the Falcons losing on Sunday night helps out a lot. And I won my fantasy championship, my fantasy league. Looks like I've locked it in and just happened tonight. And pretty happy about that. Pretty good pot. I could use the money. I could really use the money right now, among everything else. So now Netflix is going to start up. And the rollout for the USA Network finale of Monday Night Raw. And keep in mind like this, okay? We're not even talking about the fact that USA Network has had Monday Night Raw since 1993, except for, 5 years and went to Spike TV? So now we're at the point where USA Network, after another 20-year run, it's done. But now we're at the point where USA Network and WWE, when it comes to Monday Night programming, goes back farther. Because people might not remember or not even think about the fact that primetime wrestling was going on, what was it, 1982 or 1983? And I believe USA Network actually had the WWE programming before that as well, because they also had All-American Wrestling. And I believe that the programming was going on with primetime wrestling going back a little bit farther. I just remember catching primetime wrestling in 83 once I got cable in the house. Once my parents were able to get cable, we got it, and I was like watching on Monday nights. And it was wonderful. Like, it was fun to watch Monsoon and Heenan go at each other and, in the studio and all, and give the matches. And then, of course, they went into the Raw, into the idea of doing outside of studio and getting it back onto live on Monday nights. We know everything after that. So, for USA Network, they have the Friday nights covered for wrestling. And with the fact that the USA Network version of Monday Night Raw in the last 2 years, they can barely get into 2 million viewer range, okay? If they're pulling 1.3, 1.4, 1.5 million viewers doing Monday Night Football, if we're going through traditional network thinking, it's not going to matter anymore about USA Network carrying wrestling on Monday nights. I don't think it matters anymore. They could carry something else. They could very well carry, what they're going to do is they're going to counter program. It sounds like they got the Bachelor series. They're going to be running that for a duration. But they'll have other reality shows that'll run on Monday nights. They can just target towards women. It doesn't make much of a difference anymore anyways, because no one's trying to go ahead and make the move into regenerating or revolutionizing cable. It's just not. Okay, we're at a point right now in cable television as we speak where a number of cable channels are becoming irrelevant. They're basically placeholders until they get sold to somebody else. So when I talk about Viacom and Paramount, Okay, the owners, which they have just spun off, if you listen to my Broadcasters podcast, you'll know about it, spinning off MTV, VH1, BET, and Nickelodeon among their other channels, and decided to just kind of put them off to the side. We're going to make them into their own company, and they're going to just sit there, and then we're going to run on MTV and Nickelodeon. I think they're going to be running what? They're going to be rerunning, I think it was Big Bang Theory and Friends reruns. Like MTV's not even going to have ridiculousness as they always do for hours and hours on end. I think it's down, but officially moving over, they're going to just have it where you're just going to see. That's it. Like that's pretty much what you're going to have. Friends and Big Bang Theory, which are Paramount owned programming, produced programming, and they're going to just run with that. If those channels can go with that, look for TNT, for TBS, they still have the NBA right now until that deal's done in 2026. So this last year of the NBA, that's it. Because in 2026, Amazon takes it over. NBC takes their spot. And so TNT's out of it for the most part. And then what do you do next? Cable and the whole trajectory, the whole landscape about cable is changing altogether. Not to mention other channels that are kind of just getting canceled out and falling apart. Not to mention also some of the channels that are out there that are barely even pulling any kind of programming at all, or even pulling an audience, 10, 50,000 viewers. There are some channels that are not even getting but 1,000 viewers at a time of the various niche cable channels that are left. So USA, TMC, TBS, TNT, for their long run as general programming networks with sports, with scripted and reality programming, yeah, they're going to be fine. They're going to hold on to what they have left. FX, AMC, yeah, they'll still stick around. But other than that, I mean, cable's a dying brand. Even with some of the news shows, okay, the news programming, cable was always a haven for cable news, but that's also dying off because people are going more towards online. I mean, there's so much of the wrestling programming out everywhere else. So for the fact of the matter is that you got to hope that Netflix and the subscriber base, that you get a good chunk of them that are already invested into Netflix right now. So it'll be an easy transition for them. We will never know the numbers. If we ever get numbers, it might be random, but be ready. Netflix will not provide numbers after this. There will be commercials no matter what on the Netflix version of Monday Night Raw. There will be commercials. So you're going to have them and you're paying for them. You're paying for commercials. You might get a limited amount of commercials, but let me tell you, probably will be adding more as they go along. Or they won't run them as blocks like they normally would, but they're going to run commercial breaks. Listen, for NFL, they had no problem running the programming, the live Christmas Day NFL games, and running full commercials. They had no problem with that because of the exclusivity of what they had. Because it was the NFL games, nobody else had them, and they're going to go and take money just like anybody else. And they don't care if you have a premium account. You'll get those commercials as well. Because there's nothing else you're going to fill the time with. As far as I know, WWE is not going to be doing anything outside of that anyways. Now, their commercial breaks might be a bit moved around. Maybe they won't run commercials in between the matches. I think that's one thing they need to be realizing and be cognizant of when they do that, is that you don't need to go ahead and create interruptions to the matches. Run the matches complete and then go to break. If you want to do that part, I think that makes sense. That will be a difference that will be working well for them. But USA Network already made their deal. They'll have SmackDown for 3 hours. They're going to get their 3-hour slot on Friday nights. A better night for them, I think, in the long run, because they feel like, well, on Friday nights, it's just something more of a frill that they can go and compete against network television because they're kind of dying down what programming is out there on Friday nights in the first place. Mostly on Friday nights, you have programming that's much targeted towards an older audience that's staying home. For USA, they think, well, maybe we're going to get people to go and stick around and watch us on Friday nights, the younger audience or a somewhat younger demographic. But we know that Raw already had an older audience. And so will SmackDown. Now, the other thing that Netflix has got to figure out is, are they going to get a younger audience now that's going to be more adept and more used to going to Netflix to watch their programming. Now, that's one thing that you have to figure is that there's going to be the habits of the younger viewers that are wrestling fans. For them to go ahead and put their content up on Netflix, it shouldn't be a problem for them. I don't know what's going to happen with the clips and what they're going to provide as previews for people that they want to make sure that people go to Netflix to watch the programming. I don't know. But the biggest concern that's going to be happening is that Netflix is going to get a pretty packed lineup for the first show, which they have to do. The updated lineup so far, you definitely have 3 matches for sure that are going to be set up. With CM Punk versus Seth Rollins in the main event, they set that up during the show tonight. Roman Reigns versus Solo Sikoa. Solo Sikoa is put on the background, but we also know Drew McIntyre and Jey Uso are kind of an item, along with Sami Zayn. And there's a whole run around between those factions right there with Drew and Sammy and Jimmy Jey Uso and all these other folks working on their own thing. And then Liv Morgan, Rhea Ripley, and the Women's World title being put on the line once again, last women's standing match. Pay-per-view quality card. We also know we'll probably get appearances by John Cena and The Rock, and among others. That's what we're going to expecting as well. We'll have the new Raw theme song from Travis Scott. Michael Cole and Pat McAfee will be doing the commentary. So now what happens next? I mean, I know people are going to have a honeymoon period watching Netflix and saying, oh, this is wonderful. And trust me, the toxic wrestling fandom, they're going to be happy to just go do that. Everybody's already shitting out on AEW. Okay, look, we already had everything that happened when it came to World's End. It's done. And I did a recap over on the website. Go ahead and look for it. And like I said, for Tony Khan, among everybody else that gets upset about what's going on with the direction of the booking, like I said, it's difficult for them to go and book the stars they have right now in the current set. It's very clear of that. So what do you do after that? Like, what are you going to do to go ahead and kind of build things back up? Because they used so many stars that were so familiar. And so to kind of rework their characters into something that they're very adept at doing, they did. All right. Let me put it to you like this. So to see Daniel Bryan change his character to go into Blackpool Combat Club, to see Samoa Joe basically just kind of reworking the same character he's always been in TNA or in NXT or WWE, right? It's the same. Edge is Adam Copeland, a bit of a reworking of his character. Christian Cage, bringing back the Christian Cage character and bringing it up to another level of heeldom in AEW. So like those transitions were pretty simple and cut and throat. Really cut through. Same thing for then the pillars that they have right now. Okay, so reworking Swerve Strickland, reworking Adam Page, reworking Orange Cassidy, reworking Darby Allin. When they came from Ring of Honor, that maybe not a lot of people were watching of the Sinclair era, or watching Lucha Underground, they might not remember of that, or stars that might have been from the Indies that were not really on national television until that point, including MJF, except he was on MLW. So all those changes right there made a big difference. And now we see what happens. They're all set. And that's all fine. Okay. We need to just be aware that the fans in 2025 will continue to bash on AEW, and, you know, whatever their constructive criticism is going to be, Tony Khan doesn't need to listen to it. But what he needs to do is he needs to kind of figure out a better method of getting his stars over. If he's going to put his focus on new stars, Okada, who, you know, besides the Rainmaker gimmick, to translate into something more that's just for an American audience, for Ospreay, which I think he's done a better job of with Kyle Fletcher. I think they've done a pretty good job of trying to get them integrated and much more Americanized, much more suitable for American audiences to kind of absorb. And then having a Mercedes Moné removed for several years from the Sasha Banks character we've all known, She's not anything like that anymore. This Mercedes Monet character is still new, and she didn't really do much on national television in America, or North America in general, until we got to here. And so it's like working a new character. Sure, she's familiar, but without that gimmick, to start a new gimmick that's kind of stretched out from the original Sasha Banks gimmick, that is going to be difficult. She's still working well, but the character's just not gotten off yet. And the other thing, too, is that there's been a lack of momentum for the product, which we know that we're having issues with some of their shows not selling out, and the changes that they have with that. And I think that inclusion of Collision in the last year and a half has been very difficult for them. And that's just upon the company itself and their struggle with it. But AEW is not going to lose their spot next year. They'll still be the number 2 promotion in the world behind WWE for television. They're still going to be that. There's not even a question about that there. And also, they got their broadcast deal, so it doesn't make much of a difference. But he's got to figure things out. And he also, for Tony Khan, cannot fall into the same stigma of having stagnant storylines and stagnant characters that really have no evolution, no change. Now, we can't expect all characters to be Chris Jericho, which constantly evolves. He's a chameleon. We can't expect this to continue to happen. But, there was always a thing where there were multiple feuds with different stars. There was always something where you would plant the seed of some kind of a rift or friction with one star to be another one, and then you'd have that. But we don't have some of that. And some of the stars that we really enjoyed in the product that were part of this too, that were young and talented, got themselves into a little bit of issues with Sammy Guevara and Ricky Starks. And then there's just some spots that got filled. And some of the others, they didn't have a place to go with them next. Orange Cassidy's feeling like that. Adam Page has felt like that. John Moxley felt like that. Like post Blackpool Combat Club, where are we going next? The Death Riders, it feels like a placeholder. It hasn't really gone anywhere. Now we're going to get something with the FTR Adam Copeland trio to work something out with. So now you got actual opponents that are confronting, even though FTR has been attacked and, they were blindsided going into the last Rampage. Now they're back. They come in here, and Adam Copeland's return brings that together. So you now have an alliance to go ahead and finally go up against Death Riders. Now we can actually see something going on with the storyline because of all those stars right there, Claudio, Yuta, and Moxley together. You got that going for you. The patriarchy has been stagnant. They kind of have not gone anywhere much either. They've kind of been relegated off the Collision, and they've been kind of where they're at. But that's a stagnation right now of their product in one way where they haven't figured out where to go next or how to continue to keep these stars in fresh storylines and fresh feuds. On the WWE side, they don't care about refreshing feuds and continuing things. No, they just keep everything in lock. They keep everything in flux. That's the better word. Everything stays the same. When you look at what they did tonight for Monday Night Raw, you're seeing some of the same storylines in continuation. They're not going away. Seth Rollins, CM Punk was originally planned. This is coming back now because of injuries and all that brought this. We had to go and recircle back into it. Seth Rollins, CM Punk had a great promo segment tonight to build up to that once again, to kind of just reset, get the original intent of the feud between them both. They set that up for next week. Fine, great. And that'll be a feud that will continue. Okay, so that's a fresh feud we got right there. With Sami Zayn and Drew McIntyre, that's kind of attached into it. Cody Rhodes, Kevin Owens, that continues. It wasn't brought up here, but it's going to continue on SmackDown. And then you have Bloodline kind of like working after everybody because they've done that basically now, trying to go after other stars. But then Roman Reigns and his bloodline going against the Bastard bloodline, that is going to continue. And we don't know if the end of the match after one or the other is they will claim the Ula Fala. Okay. And that's going to be the end of the bloodline feud. I don't know. I don't expect it to. I think they're going to just continue to go along with it anyway. It doesn't matter. So they'll probably keep going over that no matter what. So Drew McIntyre's back fresh because he's come back from, working in the Hell in a Cell and taking some time off. So CM Punk, Drew McIntyre coming back into the separate matches. But again, they've been around, but you gave them a little bit of time off. Now they're feeling a little bit more fresh. Okay. You have a recirculating of American Made and Alpha Academy. Who asked for this part? But we're back to this once again. And Otis loses. So getting ourselves back to, of course, had a good match, but okay, same thing. One time is that, okay, Gable has to get the win over Otis. So Otis at the end looks like a goof. Using a Brian Alvarez term. So, if anybody thought that Chad Gable that Otis was going to get his retribution, no. But we don't know if they're going to continue. But they could very well continue. Rhea Ripley and Liv Morgan are continuing on now. We're going to go into another year and continue here where Liv Morgan has only had to worry about Rhea Ripley for the most part as Women's World Champion being in her crosshairs. That's it. Damian Priest still deals with Judgment Day. Now you got War Raiders in the mix. So okay, you just added some other dancing partners into the Judgment Day feud. And for whatever reason, War Raiders are working with Damian Priest. All right. Could care less about the Intercontinental Championship feud or the tournament, excuse me. And I guess they're going to get the champion kind of set up for Netflix, right? Probably will have that winner. And then Ludwig Kaiser, Sheamus, Braun Breaker, continuing that all together. And Braun Breaker just being thrown into the crux of this between Sheamus and Ludwig Kaiser. As if that's all we have to do. That's all we have to work on. Pretty much. And LWO and New Day are going to have at odds with each other. That's going to be coming up next. The new heel New Day. Anyways. And for the Women's Intercontinental Championship, which will be on Raw in 2 weeks, it will not be on the Netflix debut. They'll run it on the 13th. Laya Valkyria and Io Sky. That's it. Tell me if I should care. Oh, it's going to be Valkyria and Dakota Kai because Io Sky lost to Lyra Valkyria. So Lyra Valkyria now getting another push. Okay. And Valkyria and Dakota Kai. This championship means nothing to me. Nothing whatsoever. It's just a title amongst a bunch of mid-carders. Just because they're mid-carders. Nothing significant, nothing distinguishing characteristics, character attributes, storylines that really mold into it. No. But, of course, the toxic wrestling fandom out there is going to tell you there is. But are we going to care about that is the question. I don't know. Doesn't make much of a difference for me. But anyways. I mean, it'll be a good Raw next week. It'll be like pay-per-view quality. Great. It'll be better than what Saturday Night's main event was. Okay. And then we get to Royal Rumble. Here's the thing. Nothing's being set up for Royal Rumble. Royal Rumble is always an opportunity to get some stars kind of over on one night. That's the one thing you can do. But when we get to the Royal Rumble now, I remember we had some quiet adulation for some of the stars that came out of the 30 stars that would come out in a men or women's Royal Rumble match. That's one thing. Now, the other thing I didn't even talk about last week, which I can bring up now because this got brought up on Friday, was the word coming around now from WWE that they're considering having Royal Rumble be over 2 nights. We talked about this. We knew it was coming. I didn't bring it up. It's like everybody got upset about it. But let me tell you, I put out a note after I saw someone out there writing about this. So I made a reply about it. And I said this. Okay, I'm going to read first from the person that actually wrote this here. Okay. Now, this is somebody that is one of the very vocal voices among the toxic wrestling fandom. Okay. The audience he is placating to is the toxic wrestling fandom. He says this, quote, WWE is playing a dangerous game as they inch towards doing too much when too much isn't necessary. You made WrestleMania 2 nights, which made the weekend special. Now you're making SummerSlam 2 nights, and now the rumors Royal Rumble and Money in the Bank are falling behind, and you're actively taking away from WrestleMania being special. The greed for more revenue and record-breaking crowds are clouding their judgment. There is a happy medium. Start booking everything else around WrestleMania and just add more to the B-level pay-per-views to make them feel more substantial. Another match or 2 goes a long way. And I wrote, almost 6 years ago, remember Triple H said he will, quote unquote, empower the superstars and fans. And we're going to give you what you want, end quote. Add 6 hours of Raw and SmackDown. I've warned of toxic fandom and the corporate cash grab for months. Get ready for the toxic blowback on WWE in 2025. It's going to be too much. 6 hours right there of Raw and SmackDown. It's a lot. No one's going to watch that consistently. There's going to be a toxic wrestling fandom that will, because they're obsessed with it. Vince Russo said it, and that would be absolutely true. But after that, what? What else you got after that? I mean, not much more to I'm going to look at it from my perspective. So, like, get ready for it. It's going to be, next year's going to be very volatile. Because I do honestly think that by the end of 2025, this toxic wrestling fandom is going to turn on this company. It's going to suck when it happens. But I think by the end of the year, when these storylines do not change after WrestleMania, if we're stuck with some of the same storylines again, if the house shows are doing the same stuff over and over, if we're getting Groundhog Day by WrestleMania, the post-WrestleMania time, the draft does nothing, and these pay-per-views, they keep going to like new, different locales, and the crowds just go wild for it because they don't get to see it too much. This toxic wrestling fandom, they will turn. Their patience is thin. They're going to not be happy with what they've been getting because they'll say, okay, we got what we wanted. And you know what? They were wrong. And then what's going to happen? We're going to get more of what we don't want. I'll just be here to play commentary. Not as much as I could say about it. Now, Vince Russo talked about this on his Legion of Raw. Well, not Legion of Raw, but he was talking on another podcast on Sportskeeda's WrestleBinge channel. He says he's doubtful that the show will deliver anything to what Triple H puffed up at the Netflix kickoff event. That January 6th Raw will feel like a mini WrestleMania. And Russo will say, and I will not do his voice, I don't believe anything Triple H says. I really don't. I mean, he's compared this to the Attitude Era. Saturday Night's Main Event was an absolute flop. I don't believe anything the dude says. I don't believe anything Tony Khan says either. It's all talk, man. It's all chatter and it's all talk. I stopped believing anything they say a long time ago. Other things that might happen on the Raw Netflix debut is Logan Paul is scheduled to return, and he may reveal intentions to challenge Gunther for the World Heavyweight Championship. And, of course, we know that John Cena will be on hand to kick off his 2025 retirement tour. So, that's it, man. We're going to leave it there. We'll come back next year, 2025, do it all over again. And, again, we will start with episode 900 of the program. So, Happy New Year from yours truly. And come back next year for another Wrestling Control podcast because wrestling needs us.